we're going to dive into one of the most game-changing battles in all of European history. I mean, this is the story of how, in just one single day, one empire spectacularly fell, and another one dramatically rose to take its place.
I mean, think about it. How does this superpower just collapse in a single day? It sounds impossible, right? How can a whole century of military dominance just evaporate in a few hours? But believe it or not, on one fateful summer day back in 1709, that is exactly what happened.
Right here, this is the place. We're talking about the Battle of Poltava. It all went down in modern-day Ukraine, a massive showdown between the seemingly invincible Swedish Empire and the up-and-coming Tsardom of Russia. And let me tell you, by the time the smoke cleared on this field, the map of Europe was never, ever going to be the same. Okay, so to really feel the shockwave of Poltava, you gotta understand who the Swedes were at the turn of the 18th century. They weren't just some regional player. No. They were the power, the undisputed heavyweights of Northern Europe. So, for years, this guy, King Charles XII, had been leading his armies all across Europe in what's known as the Great Northern War, and he was a certified military genius. His forces, well, they were considered the absolute best on the continent. They were on this unbelievable winning streak, just crushing a coalition of nations that had dared to stand up to them. And you can just see how methodically they did it. First, they take care of Denmark. Then, an absolutely stunning victory at Narva against a Russian force that was way, way bigger. By 1706, boom, they'd knocked the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth right out of the war. So by 1707, only one major rival was left standing, Russia, led by the one and only Peter the Great.
So here's the big question, right? How on earth did this unstoppable army end up in a position where it could actually be defeated? Well, the answer isn't just in the battle itself. It's really in the absolutely disastrous campaign that got them there in the first place. Okay, so picture this. Autumn, 1707. Charles marches on Russia with this massive, battle-hardened army. We're talking 44,000 men. On paper, these guys should have been more than a match for anything Peter the Great had. But here's the thing. They weren't just about to fight an army. They were about to fight an entire country. See, the Russians played it smart. They refused to give him that one big battle he wanted. Instead, they just retreated. And as they retreated, they burned everything. Everything. So the Swedish supply lines got longer and longer until they just snapped. Cossacks would stage these constant hit-and-run attacks, just bleeding them dry. And then came the winter. And folks, this wasn't just any winter. It was the coldest one in 500 years, the Great Frost, they called it, and it was a weapon more deadly than any cannon. And look at the cost of that march. Just look. The Swedish army was cut by more than half, down to 20,000 men. Think about that. Starvation, frostbite, these endless small attacks. They had bled the army white before they even got a glimpse of the main Russian force. And then, as if things weren't bad enough, you get this final, crushing stroke of bad luck. Charles XII. This is a king who famously led his cavalry charges from the very front. He gets hit by a stray bullet in the foot, just a random shot while he was scouting the Russian lines. He couldn't stand, forget about riding a horse, so command had to be handed over. Just like that, the charismatic heart and soul of the Swedish army was taken right off the board. So the stage is set. You've got a battered, half-starved Swedish army. Their legendary king is wounded and out of commission. And now they have to face a massive, well-fed, well-supplied Russian force on its own home turf. This is not looking good. And Peter the Great wasn't just sitting around waiting. Oh no, he prepared this brilliant defensive trap. His engineers built a whole system of these small forts, they're called redoubts, and they were designed to do one thing: completely screw up the Swedish advance, break up their formations, slow them down, and funnel them directly into what was basically a kill zone, right into the line of fire of his cannons. It was a meat grinder by design. And from the get-go, the Swedish plan just completely unraveled. First, they lost the element of surprise. The Russians saw them coming. Then, total confusion. Orders were a mess. Some units were told to attack the redoubts, others were told to go around them. It was chaos. And in all that chaos, a huge chunk of the Swedish infantry, led by a General Rus, got totally separated from the main army. They were surrounded, and 2,600 men, that's a third of their infantry, were forced to surrender. And get this, the main battle hadn't even started yet.
So when the rest of the Swedes finally push forward to attack the main Russian line, this is the nightmare they're facing. They're outnumbered almost 3-1. But that's not even the worst part. Look at the artillery. The Swedes had managed to bring up just 4 cannons. The Russians, they had 86. 86! It's not even a fair fight. It's like bringing a knife to a cannon fight. And the Swedes charged forward with that incredible bravery they were famous for. They always did. But bravery, it just wasn't going to be enough. Not this time. The much larger Russian line pulled off this classic military move, a double envelopment, where their flanks just folded in, trapping the Swedes in the middle. Caught in a hellish crossfire and just completely overwhelmed by the numbers, the legendary Swedish army simply fell apart. And just like that, in a few short hours, it was all over. The battle was done. But the consequences, oh, they were just getting started. This wasn't just a win for Russia. This was one of those moments in history that completely redraws the entire balance of power. The end came fast. Just 3 days later, what was left of that once mighty Swedish army was cornered at a river. There was nowhere left to run, no escape. They surrendered. It was the absolute final end of the road. For Sweden, it was the greatest military catastrophe in its history. And this really gets to the heart of it. This is the big takeaway. Before Poltava, Sweden was the dominant power in Northern Europe, period. After Poltava, their time as a great power was basically over, and Russia under Peter the Great stepped right into that role, cementing its place as the new, formidable empire in Eastern Europe. You know, historians don't agree on much, but on this, they're pretty much unanimous. Poltava was the turning point. It brought the old anti-Swedish coalition roaring back to life and completely sealed the empire's fate. It was, quite literally, the beginning of the end for one great power and the dawn of a new age for another. So Poltava is just this incredible reminder that history can turn on a dime. A single day really can redraw the map and create an entirely new world order. It certainly did back in 1709, and it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the pivotal moments, the decisive battles, maybe not even military ones, that are shaping the world we're going to live in tomorrow?